The royal family of Ravania were going to visit the city during their world trip, and, of course, they were all bringing their precious crowns with them. They asked the mayor of the city to take special precautions.
Thank you.
So, he placed the crowns in a safe in a hidden room in his office, guarded by a couple of security officers. However, the next morning, when the mayor came to check on the crowns to report to the royal family that they were safe, he started panicking. Can you guess why? It's because the crowns inside the safe are not the real ones. The first crown has a price tag on it. The second crown is broken, and one of the gemstones on the third crown is missing.
Oh no!
That wouldn't happen if it was the real thing. The mayor wanted to make sure that whoever had stolen the crowns was caught. He also hoped the police would find them before the media learned about what had happened. And the only person who could help him was Detective Zelda. So, he immediately called her. The detective arrived at his office and inspected the secret room. She noticed something that might help her with her investigation. Can you figure out what it is? There's a piece of paper under one of the fake crowns. The thief left a note. Detective Zelda read it. Dear Mayor, I'm very disappointed in you. This accident has proved how inept you are at providing comfort and security for your guests, as well as your citizens. I believe I can be convinced to give the crowns back if you pay me a large, and I mean it, sum of money. Mark my words and count on what I say in my letter on this matter. Here is my contact number. 19.1-1.3-19.4-1.2 and 13.3-1.2-6.3-9.1. Yours truly, the Riddling Man. What can you make of this number? Well, the mayor thought it was a phone number. He immediately took his phone and dialed the number. But, just as Detective Zelda suspected, no one answered. In one of the last sentences of his letter, the Riddling Man underlined mark, words, count, and letter. That must be a hint. The number before the dot indicates which word you should look for in the note, and the number after the dot tells you which letter you need in that word. For example, 19.1 means you need to find the 19th word, which is comfort. The letter you need is the first one, which is C. When you do that for every number, you'll get Cafe West. Before Detective Zelda left for the cafe, she decided to check the security camera footage recorded at night. The mayor took her to the surveillance room. There were 3 different monitors, each showing the room from different angles. Detective Zelda realized only one of them was still recording live. The other 2 were showing fake images. Which recording is real and why? Do you remember what the room looked like when Detective Zelda was inspecting it? The clock certainly wasn't on this wall. It was on the opposite one, so the footage on the first monitor is fake. The footage on the second monitor isn't real also. If you look closer, you'll see a moth flying around the room, but it repeats the same movement over and over again. That's badly edited fake footage, so it makes the footage from the third monitor the real one.
Oh yes!
Detective Zelda rewound the footage and found the moment when the Riddling Man had broken into the room. He was covering his face, so it was impossible to tell what he looked like. Still, Detective Zelda managed to notice something that could help her find the criminal. Can you tell what it is? If you look at the lower left corner, you'll see someone walk into the room and leave it quickly while the Riddling Man is stealing the crowns. Could that mean that the Riddling Man has a partner? To find that out, Detective Zelda questioned all the security guards who had been working the night shift. The first guard, George, said that he'd been keeping watch in front of the door. The only time he left his place was when he took a short bathroom break. The second guard, Joe, said he'd been standing in front of the door to the mayor's office all night, and the only person who took a break was George. The third guard, Brian, said he'd been right there by the door as well. Detective Zelda knew only one of them was telling the truth, and the other two were lying. Who is the liar? Do you remember what the shoes of the man who entered the room looked like? White sneakers, and that's what Brian is wearing. So he's lying. And since Joe didn't mention that Brian had left his place, he's a liar too. George is the only one who's telling the truth.
Ciao.
Brian and Joe immediately started begging Zelda. "We can't end up in jail. We promised we didn't steal anything. You have to believe us," Detective Zelda asked. "Then why did you lie?" They said that they had heard some noise coming from the room while George was away. They decided that Brian would check the room and Joe would keep watch. When Brian saw someone in the room, he got scared and ran out of there. He told Joe that he would rather lose his job than have something bad happen to him. As for Joe, he lied because Brian was his best friend and he didn't want him to get fired. And since they never saw anyone enter or exit the room, they thought they were imagining things. After all, they were very tired. What do you think Zelda can do to check if the guards are telling the truth? She can check the surveillance footage of the street outside the building to confirm that nobody entered or left. When Zelda couldn't see anyone even walk across the street, she came to the conclusion that Brian and Joe were telling the truth.
Yeah!
The detective decided to check the secret room once again to figure out how the riddling man had gotten inside. Sometime later, she managed to spot another hidden door. Can you see it too? The bookcase is actually a door.
Oh my god!
She examined the door to figure out how to open it. She noticed 3 buttons, but only one could open the door. If Zelda pressed the wrong button, the door would get locked for good, and she would not be able to figure out where it led. Which button should she press? Take a look at the books next to the buttons. One of the titles is meaningless, while the others make sense. That must be an anagram, a word or phrase formed by rearranging the letters of another. When you rearrange the letters in the title, you'll get the second button. Detective Zelda pressed it, and the bookcase door opened. The woman saw a narrow hallway with stairs leading down. She took a step, and the door closed behind her back. She tried to force it open, but it wouldn't move. The only thing she could do was go down the stairs. She ended up in an underground pit. Inside, there was nothing but a shovel and a sign that showed her that she was around the pit. In the hole to the left, there were venomous snakes. The pit on the right was filled with poisonous gas. And on the ground right above her head, there was an angry dog with sharp teeth. What should she do? She should dig upwards. She needs to listen to the sounds the dog makes and wait for the animal to fall asleep. Then she should walk quietly past it. That must be how the riddling man entered and left the room. Detective Zelda didn't want to waste any more time, so she headed to Cafe West. A guy sitting at the table in the corner caught her eye. He looked suspicious. When Detective Zelda started walking towards him, he quickly wrote something on the newspaper he'd been reading. Then he ran away through the back door. Detective Zelda tried to catch him, but failed. She checked the paper and found another note. It said, "You're not the mayor, but I'll give him one last chance. It looks like you work for him, so bring me $20 million in cash. We can meet at the building that has the most stories in 2 hours." What building does the riddling man mean? The library. Of course, Detective Zelda was not going to give him any money. She took an empty bag to trick him into believing she had the cash so that he wouldn't run away. She went to the library. When she entered, she saw the riddling man wearing the same sunglasses and coat. He was waiting for her in the riddle and puzzle books section. Then, suddenly, someone accidentally pushed the woman. She dropped her bag. It fell on the floor and opened. The riddling man saw it was empty and understood that this was just a plan to catch him. He ran away. But he dropped something while escaping. It was a library book, and there was a library card inside. It had 3 different addresses of 3 different people who had borrowed the book before. Zelda immediately realized which was the riddling man's address. How did she figure it out? Remember the note the riddling man wrote to her at the cafe? The first address is written by the same person. Detective Zelda had 2 police officers break into the riddling man's apartment. They found the crowns, but the criminal was gone. For some reason, Detective Zelda felt that she would see the riddling man again. There was an incident in a secret laboratory. One of the scientists released a substance that turned people into vampires. Detective Reed arrived at the scene to interview 3 witnesses. The first scientist, Michael, said, "I stopped by the lab this morning to pick up some notes. The machines were working just fine, and I didn't see anyone. I took the papers and left." The second scientist, Lindsay, said, "I closed the lab at night. One of the PCs was faulty, but I was very tired and decided to leave it till the morning. Unfortunately, I overslept." And the third scientist, Jennifer, said, "I got up early and went to the lab to check the devices. No one seems to have entered the room. I fixed one of the computers and left." Which one of them was lying? Michael is lying. One of the computers was actually faulty, and Jennifer spent the whole morning fixing it. If Michael had walked into the lab, he would have known about it, or Jennifer would have noticed him. So he must have entered the lab after the others had already left. But why would someone release such a dangerous substance? Michael didn't want to confess, so Detective Reed decided to investigate the crime scene to find out who was behind this. Take a look at this picture. Is there anything suspicious? It looks like Michael dropped an ID card. And look, it doesn't belong to him. The name on the card is George Wilson. Let's ask him about the incident. Detective Reed went to Mr. Wilson's office to ask him about the incident. "Oh yeah, I gave my pass to Michael," Mr. Wilson said. "But that's only because I had left something in the lab. My glasses. I didn't have time, so I asked Michael to pick them up." Well, that's not a very clever excuse, but how can you prove the man is lying? There's an open glasses case on the table, and the glasses are inside. But Mr. Wilson, didn't you say that you left them in the lab? "Oh, did I say my glasses? Sorry, I meant my papers. I made this mistake because I asked my secretary Shirley to look for my glasses yesterday." Find something to prove Mr. Wilson is lying. There's a calendar on Shirley's desk. Yesterday was her day off. It's marked red. Mr. Wilson is lying. Mr. Wilson was arrested, but people have already begun to turn into vampires. Can you guess who's actually a vampire? The woman on the right. She's putting on her makeup, but do you see? She isn't reflected in the mirror. Meanwhile, those who haven't turned into vampires gather everything they might need to survive. Which of these people is more likely to stay alive? All these supplies won't protect the guy on the right from vampires. As for the girl on the left, she's stocked up on what she can to defeat the vampires. She has a higher chance of survival. Let's check out the subway. There are 2 women here. Which of them is not pregnant? The girl on the left is not pregnant. Look, her belly is of a very strange shape. That's because she has hidden her survival supplies under her clothes. Vampires decided to throw a party. Who among those present is actually an undercover human? The guy on the left is a human. He's wearing makeup and false teeth. Nikki is also trying to survive. She packs her things and decided to move to a neighboring town, but suddenly a vampire charged at her car. He damages the vehicle and takes away some supplies. Fortunately, he doesn't manage to bite Nikki. She escapes. Nikki has to stay home. The next day, a young man knocks on her door and asks for help. Is it okay to let him in? Nope. He has the same scar on his cheek like the vampire from the day before. Nikki continues to hide at home. One day, some girl starts knocking on her back door. Please help! A pack of vampires is chasing me! Nikki opens the door. The girl is out of breath, but she manages to say, They're almost here. Can I come in? Is it safe to let her in? No! This girl is a vampire. Anyone in this situation would immediately run inside the house, but vampires can't come in without an invitation. Nikki was checking her house and suddenly noticed that there was someone in the attic. She approached the shadows. It was a father and daughter. Please don't kick us out. Sorry, we snuck in without permission. We've been trying to hide from the vampires. The father said, Is it safe to let them stay? Yes, firstly, they're sitting in the sun, but their skin seems to be okay. Secondly, they managed to enter the house without an invitation. That means they're humans. Nikki let them stay. Let's take a little break. Time for some quick riddles. Think fast. A vampire lived in a one-story black cottage. He had a black cat, a black fish, a black computer, a black armchair, a black desk, and a black phone. Everything was black. What color was the staircase? There was no staircase in that house because it was a one-story cottage. 3 vampires are walking fast. The first vampire says, 2 other vampires are walking behind me. The second one says,
1 vampire is walking behind me, and 1 is walking in front of me.
And the third one says, 2 vampires are walking in front of me, and 2 are walking behind me. How is that possible? These vampires are walking in circles. Humans, vampires, and werewolves gathered in one mansion. There are as many werewolves as there are vampires. There are as many vampires as there are humans. How many creatures are there if 3 of them are werewolves? There are 9 creatures in the mansion, 3 werewolves, 3 vampires, and 3 humans. Now let's go back to Nikki and her adventures. Nikki, Peter, and his daughter Becky decided to go to another town together. It takes 2 days to get there. They drove all day until night fell. Now they have 3 options. First, they can continue driving until the morning, despite the fact that they may meet a lot of vampires along the way. Second, they can spend the night in the nearest cave with bats. And third, they can sleep in the car. Which option would be the safest for them? Sleeping in the car is a bad idea. Vampires can sneak up on them in the middle of the night. A night in a cave is also a bad option. Vampires can hide among these bats. The safest option is to keep driving. Although they'll probably meet vampires, they have a chance to survive if they drive faster. They drove really fast and managed to reach the city by the morning. But when they got out of the car, they discovered they were surrounded by vampires. To escape, they need to choose one of 3 roads. On the first road, there's a pack of vampires. They're coming straight at the guys. There are wild hogs on the second road. The third road leads through a dark alley with hundreds of bats. Which of these 3 ways is the safest? The second way is the best option because the sun illuminates it, so vampires can't follow Nikki and her new friends. Plus, these dogs don't look too unfriendly. The guys reach 3 stores. Now they need to decide which of the stores is safe to enter. Nikki, Peter, and Becky look through the windows to see what's inside. The first store is empty, but it seems to be full of traps. The second store is full of survivors, but they look dangerous. And the third store seems empty as well, but it's completely dark there, and you can't see anything except for dozens of bats. Where should Nikki lead her friends? The first store is the safest. If Nikki, Peter, and Becky notice these traps, then the chances are high they'll be able to avoid them. It's worth a try. There's a man in the city who's trying to survive by hiding among vampires. Nikki spent a week photographing vampires to figure out who he was. Will you be able to see who is actually human in these photos? You can see this man has all 4 photos. In one of the photos, he's eating garlic bread, and in this one, his leg is exposed to the sun. He's only pretending to be a vampire. Nikki and the others decided to invite this man to join their group. The man was delighted and said that his name was Douglas. He was a journalist looking for safe places for people. He suggested creating a password that only humans could figure out. They came up with this one: HAWUH. Can you guess why? If you look at the reflection of this word in the mirror, you will see Huwan, or Huwan. Flip the letter W and you get the word human. But only those who get reflected in the mirror will be able to solve this puzzle. Nikki and her friends settle down in this town. Can you guess which of these houses belongs to Nikki, in which Peter and Becky live, and in which Douglas has chosen? House number 1 belongs to Peter and Becky. There are 2 bicycles next to it. House number 2 belongs to the journalist. Do you see his equipment? And the remaining house, house number 3, belongs to Nikki. Rachel called the police early in the morning. When they arrived, she told the officers her story.
I work in a museum. Yesterday, I took home several ancient books. I wanted to do some research, but then a blackout happened. I lit a couple of candles and continued my work. Suddenly, I heard the doorbell ring. When I opened the door, someone in a black mask hit me on the head. When I recovered, the books were gone.
Detective Anderson arrested the woman for misreporting. Why? If there had been a blackout, the doorbell wouldn't have been working. After a bank had been robbed, the police found a bag with money in the park. It was lying among cacti. The police officers arrested 3 suspects. It didn't take long to figure out who the bank robber was. Do you know who it is? It's the man on the left. He's the only one with some scratches. They must have been left by the cacti. Detective Brown stopped a man leaving a clothing store.
The sales assistant claims you've stolen some expensive gloves.
"These are my gloves! I've had them for ages!" the man exclaimed. But the detective immediately understood the man was lying. How?
The man wouldn't be able to use these gloves. They're both for the same hand. A family with 2 teenagers went on vacation to the seaside. They lived in a small bungalow almost right on the beach. Everything was great at first, but 2 days after their arrival, their younger son went missing. The police had 4 suspects. They invited the guy's family to look at them. Maybe they could recognize someone. The teenager's mother didn't need more than a glance before she knew who was behind her son's disappearance. Who was it? It's the man wearing the missing guy's baseball cap. Michael was going home from the gym when everything went black. When the guy came around, he found out that he was in a locked room. Next to the door, there was a computer with a keyboard. On the screen, there was a riddle. Michael had to type the correct answer and the door would open. The riddle went like this. It makes 2 people out of 1. What is it? Michael typed the correct word and the door opened. He was free to go. What was the answer? It's a mirror. Police detective Thomas Davis was walking along the street on a winter evening. Suddenly, he saw a person in a black mask sneaking out of a house through the window. They were carrying 2 large bags. The detective realized it was a burglar. He ran after the stranger, but they turned the corner and disappeared. Thomas understood that the criminal had hidden in one of these houses, but which one? It can't be the house on the left. There are too many people inside. There are no footprints in the snow leading to the house on the right. It means no one has been there for quite some time, which leaves us with the house in the middle. Oliver was attacked in his apartment and taken to a hospital. The police had 4 suspects, all of them Oliver's neighbors. Amelia said she'd been walking in the park since early morning. Henry explained he'd been painting in his studio and had heard nothing. Jacob said he'd been repairing his car. Sophia answered she'd been taking a bath for the past 3 hours. Look at these people's hands and try to figure out who is lying. It's a bit strange that Jacob, who'd been repairing his car, and Henry, who'd been painting, both have such clean hands. But they could have been wearing gloves. At the same time, Sophia's hands and fingers aren't wrinkled. But it would be a natural skin reaction after 3 hours in a bathtub. How many bricks does it take to complete a building? Just 1. It will be the last one. A man wanted to buy a used car. He found a nice one which cost $9,000. He bought it and didn't pay a dime for it. How come? When paying $9,000, you don't need to spend dimes. Now let's check your math skills. How can you write 45 using only the number 4? (44 plus 44 44ths). Nathan sneaked out of the house late in the evening to meet his girlfriend. The teenager thought he was extremely careful and quiet, but his whole family knew about his plan. They were aware that the guy would return at midnight. They decided to make a bet. The one who would see Nathan first when the guy started climbing the fence would be the winner. No chores for them for 1 week. Not to fall asleep, Nathan's dad switched on the TV. The teen's grandfather settled in the living room and started to read a book. The grandmother went to the kitchen to make pizza, and Nathan's mom went to her room, sat down on the floor, and started meditating. Who's going to be the first to spot Nathan when the time comes? Nathan's mom. Her eyes will be used to the darkness, and she will see better than the others. The CEO of a large company called the police. He was sure that one of his employees, Victoria, had stolen a memory card with secret information. She was going to sell it to the competitors. The police arrived at Victoria's house, but the woman didn't let them in without a warrant. The officers had to leave to get all the necessary papers. When they came back, Victoria was already sitting in her car, ready to drive off. The police officers arrested the woman. They searched her car and clothes, but found nothing. And then, when they were about to give up, one of the detectives realized where Victoria kept the memory card. Can you figure it out? When the police first came to her, the woman had her hair down, but after that, Victoria changed her hairstyle. The memory card is in her bun. Martin was driving past a bus stop when he saw 3 people standing there. One of them was Monica, a woman he had a crush on. Martin also spotted Sam, his friend, and an elderly lady who looked like she was freezing. Unfortunately, Martin had a 2-seater car. What should he do? He should let Sam borrow his car and stay at the bus stop with the girl he likes. This way, Sam will be able to give a lift to the elderly woman, and Martin will have more time to get to know Monica better. During a fire, a bank was robbed. The security guard told the police he wanted to save a bag with money, but he had to lace up his boot right in front of the emergency kit. At that moment, the door opened and hit him on the head. When he recovered, the money was missing. Why was the security guard arrested? All emergency doors open outward. Detective Adams came to the park to have lunch in the sun, but his attention was drawn by 3 men running around a fountain. Each of them was shouting, "Thief! Catch the thief!" The detective was confused. Who was the real thief? That's why he just kept watching. After some time, the distance between the men shortened. Detective Adams immediately realized who the real thief was. Can you figure it out too? If the third man was the thief, the second one would only have to turn around to catch him. The same goes for the second man, which means the man running in first is the criminal. Someone robbed a bank in a large city. A police detective went to visit the main suspect. "I've been feeling unwell all this week, and I haven't left my apartment for 3 days. I didn't even need food. My fridge is full. You can make sure yourself," the suspect said, and indeed opened his fridge. But the detective realized the man was lying and arrested him. How did he figure it out? First of all, the bread on the table looks fresh. Plus, if the man had been staying inside for 3 days already, his fridge wouldn't be that full. Sheila participates in a beauty pageant. The next catwalk will take place in 30 minutes. Sheila leaves her stuff in the dressing room and goes outside to talk on the phone. After that, she returns and sees that someone has torn her costume. Sheila gets furious and questions her rivals. Millie says, "I was getting my makeup done, so I sat in my chair motionless, and I couldn't look around." Chelsea says, "I was in a toilet. I think I ate something wrong for lunch." And Isabella says, "I was outside the dressing room filming stories for my subscribers." Who is lying? Millie. She said she got her makeup done, but why did she ruin it by putting on a face mask? Sheila goes to the storage room to find a new dress. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind her.
Oh no!
She needs to enter an 8-letter password to open the door. Sheila needs to be on the stage in 5 minutes. Can you help her crack the code?
This picture on the wall is a hint. Sheila needs to enter paradise. Sheila opens the door and meets face to face with creepy rats. She runs away and gets lost in the basement. Sheila finds these 3 doors leading to the stage, but each door is hiding some danger. There are broken wires and a puddle of water on the floor behind the first door. There's a scorpion behind the second door waiting to bite Sheila. And there's a magical portal leading to the top of a mountain behind the third door. Can you help Sheila make the right choice? She should choose the first door. There's enough space. Sheila can crawl underneath the wires. Sheila enters the stage and spots 3 weird details in the auditorium. Can you see them too? Take a closer look at this lady. She's holding a book upside down. This musician is playing the violin without any strings. Also, there's a panda among the viewers. Sheila becomes a beauty queen. She gets a diamond tiara and a paycheck. She goes backstage, but suddenly, all lights in the building go out for a few seconds. When the lights turn on again, Sheila sees that someone has stolen her tiara. She questions 3 rivals. Zoe says, "I don't want your cheap tiara. My dad is a billionaire." Jasmine says, "Someone pushed me in the dark and scratched my dress." Rachel says, "You must have dropped it on the floor. Look better." Who stole the tiara? Zoe. It's hidden under her diamond necklace. The next day, Sheila wakes up in a creepy castle. A wicked witch turned her into a monkey. To break the black magic, Sheila needs to use a spell. But the spell book is locked in a box. The lock requires a 6-digit code. Can you help her open the box? There are exactly 6 candles on the shelf above the box. It's a hint. Each candle has a particular number of dots, so the code is 2436621. There are 4 big houses in Sheila's neighborhood. All 4 are standing in one row, and they have different colors: red, green, white, and blue. Mrs. Jones's house is somewhere to the left of the green house. The third house in the row is white. Mrs. Snake owns a red house, and Mrs. Crystal doesn't live at either end of the row, but she lives somewhere to the right of the blue house. Meanwhile, Mrs. Dillon lives in the 4th house. And the first house isn't red. Can you decide who lives where and what the color of each person's house is? From the clues, we know that the first and the third houses can't be red. Mrs. Dillon lives in the 4th house. Therefore, Mrs. Snake, who owns the red house, can only live in the 2nd. Since Mrs. Crystal doesn't live at either end, she must live in the 3rd house, which is white. Mrs. Jones's house is somewhere to the left of the green house, which means that Mrs. Dillon lives in the 4th house. As for Mrs. Jones, she lives in the 1st house, and it's blue. Can you spot a fake teacher? The guy on the left isn't a real teacher, he's an actor. Take a closer look. There's a rec camera icon at the top of the screen. 2 friends want to cross a river. The only way to get to the other side is by boat. But this boat can only take 1 person at a time. The boat cannot return on its own, and there are no ropes or any other similar tricks. Yet both guys managed to cross the river using the boat. How is that possible? The guys started on the opposite banks of the river. Josh and Bob are twins. Josh lives with his wife, and Bob lives alone. Can you guess which one is Josh? It's the first guy. He has a pair of toothbrushes in his bathroom, while Bob only has one. A time traveler is attending this party. Can you spot this person? This lady's shoes look too old-fashioned. Chuck enters a spooky building where he's supposed to have a job interview. Suddenly, someone locks the door, and now Chuck is trapped. He wanders around for a while and sees these 4 doors. He also finds a note. Only door 3 is leading to the job interview. The remaining doors will take you to the black hole. Good luck. Can you help Chuck choose the right door? No need for luck, Chuck. The symbols on the door are actually numbers. So, Chuck should enter this door. I talk to you, you talk to me. Every day, you hold me. Yet, I can't smell you. What am I? I'm your mobile phone. A gentleman and a lady are talking. The person with black hair says, I'm a gentleman. The person with blonde hair says, I'm a lady. At least one of them lied. Can you guess the hair color of each person? If only one of them lied, they would both be gentlemen or both be ladies. Therefore, they both lied. It means that the lady has black hair and the gentleman is blonde. Can you spot what's wrong in this picture? There's no milk in the jug. Can you see anything odd in this picture? The image in the mirror is not reflected. Can you spot a vampire? This guy over here. Fiona is a young witch. She finds these 4 portals in a haunted castle. Fiona chooses one of the portals and enters. You can hear city noises from the first portal. You can hear sea waves from the second portal. You can hear leaves rustling from the third portal. And bells are ringing from the fourth. Which portal did Fiona enter? Fiona's dirty footprints on the floor are leading to the third portal. Don't mind the different sounds. This could just be a magic trick. Billy finds himself on the roof of a skyscraper that is about to crumble. The only way out is to use one of these 4 elevators. There's a werewolf hiding behind the first elevator. If Billy chooses the second elevator, he'll fall hundreds of feet. Super venomous snakes are crawling all over the third elevator. And mutated scorpions are waiting for Billy inside the fourth elevator. Just one bite will make him fall asleep forever. Which way should Billy choose? The first one. Take a look at the sky. The moon is not full, so the werewolf is harmless. Rachel meets 3 of her former school friends in the parking lot. All 3 want to impress Rachel, so they begin to discuss their new cars. Melanie says, I wanted my car to be one of a kind, so I bought this one. Peter says, since I'm a beginner, I purchased the cheapest used car. And finally, Samantha says, I bought a large car because I have a big family. Rachel spots a liar right away. What about you? It's Samantha. Her car key doesn't match the logo on the car.